Most founders think getting featured in Forbes is about connections, PR agencies, or just pure luck, but it is not. I have seen completely unknown founders with zero following, no big exits, no media presence, land quotes in Forbes, Business Insiders, and other big publications. Today, I'm breaking down exactly how they do it, step by step, so your clients and yourself can start landing these placements consistently. Hi everyone. If you are in PR, founder branding, or agency side outreach, this is going to be one of the most practical playbooks you will watch. So, we are not going to cover any fluff, no build relationships for 6 months advice, just what actually works right now. So, let's get started. Let us reset the expectations first. So, unknown founders don't get featured because they are interesting. They get featured because they are useful to journalists on a deadline. That's it. Journalists writing for platforms like Forbes and other big publications need expert commentary fast. They need clear, quotable insights, and they need credibility signals they can trust quickly. So, your job in PR isn't get exposure. Your job is to make the journalist job ridiculously easy. So, where these opportunities actually come from? Most PR teams are looking in the wrong places. They chase editorial submissions, cold pitching generic stories, or paid features. But unknown founders get quoted through reactive PR platforms that are in numbers out there. So, for example, Harrow, Quoted, Featured, Responsos are some great PR platforms. Then they look for journalist callouts on Twitter or LinkedIn. Next is they also use contributor driven publication. So a huge percentage of Forbes quotes comes from contributor instead of staff writer, which means the journalists who write for big publications, they need content regularly. They rely heavily on external quotes and they are more accessible than you think. So what are the pitches that actually get accepted? Now, this is where 90% of PR teams fail. They send long intros, founder bios, company descriptions, but journalists don't care about all that. Here's the winning structure, which we call the 5 part winning pitch formula. The first thing in this formula is direct subject line. So, with each element of the formula, I will also give you the example to make everything pretty easy for you to understand. Let's start with direct subject line. So, match exactly what the journalist asked for. For example, you can write something like response to remote work burnout, founder insight. This not only tells them that this is the response to their query that they asked, it's also coming from founders. So it's going to contain founders insight, which will make them understand the pitch without even looking at the pitch. So that increases your chances of getting your pitch accepted. Second factor is one line credibility. Don't write any bio, just give them proof. For example, in or under one line credibility, you can just simply say, I run a 120-person remote agency across 4 time zones. So, third is the quote, and this is everything. Make your quote specific, opinionated, and experience packed. Let me give you an example of a good and bad quote. So, when we talk about a bad quote, it is generic, like remote work is challenging but manageable. But when we speak about good quote, it is very specific. For example, remote work doesn't fail because of distance, it fails because most founders replace the structure with trust and call it culture. Then the fourth element is optional supporting line, where you can add a quick stats, example, or result. I would say that if your pitch is not too long and there is still space to to add one small line, you can of course go ahead with adding a stat because that increases the credibility of your pitch and it of course end up getting published. Then end up your pitch with clean and simple signature. So do not add any sort of fluff. Don't make your signature look like a pitch deck. Do not overload your signature with links because you are not pitching a founder or you know someone else from the same industry you're pitching, the journalist, and journalists look for a ready to publish quote. Now, what makes a quote Forbes worthy, or in general, what makes a quote more acceptable for big publications? So, if your quotes aren't getting picked, it's usually because they lack one of these factors. First is contrarian angle. Journalists love tension. So, when you write something like most startups don't fail from lack of funding, they fail from premature scaling. It it contains some sort of tension which journalists like, and this sort of angles is something that is always trendy and always attracts the journalist to add those quotes in their content. So, contrarian angle is uh, in forever trend. Then second is specificity, where your code needs to be very specific. When you write vague codes, it's gonna get ignored. So for example, we increased retention by 42% after removing weekly meetings. You see how specific this one is, along with a data that makes your code not only credible but also in sync with what the journalist is looking for. Third is founder voice. Do not use corporate language. It should sound like a real opinion, a lived experience, and if they are specifically looking for a founder code, make sure it has that founder voice. Next is clean soundbite energy. If it can be copy pasted into an article, it wins. So the aim is to have your code ready to publish for journalists. Now, here's something most PR teams underestimate. Journalists often um, pick the first 5 to 10 solid responses and ignore everything that comes later. So, winning teams do not just wait for the opportunity, they monitor requests in real time and they respond within 30 to 90 minutes, not in their end of day. Next is how unknown founders build momentum, and this is very important for you to understand that one placement is good, but the smart PR teams, they compound it. And how do they compound it? Step one is they land 1 to 2 quotes in mid-tier publications. Step two is they use those credibility in future pitches, and in future whenever they do pitch to another publication, they also mention that previously featured in. So that gives the new journalist a chance to peek in your previous work. Step 3 is start getting picked more often. And step 4, pitch proactively to contributors. So, all this combined creates a flywheel, which is credibility gives you more features, and more features give you easier placements. Now, let's talk about some of the common mistakes that kill your chances of getting your pitch accepted. Avoid these mistakes at all cost. So, sending generic AI sounding responses is a big no. Next, writing essays instead of quotes. If the journalist is specifically looking for a certain word count, say 150 or 200, you can write it accordingly. But if they say they need just short answers, make sure you stick to what they're looking for. Next is overselling the founder, missing deadlines, and ignoring what the journalist actually asked. So, if you take one thing from this video, it should be that unknown founders don't get into Forbes by being famous. They get in by being fast, clear, and useful. And if your PR team can consistently deliver that, you don't need connections. You'll start getting picked. So, let me know your thoughts on this topic, and let me know what are the strategies you've recently found to be very useful. And as usual, if you have any questions, any doubts for us, feel free to drop them in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next one.